Hello.
It doesn't matter how tired I am. As soon as that song plays, I start bopping.
And I start getting excited. Oh, and we have Pam with us tonight again.
Hello, Pam. So I am Amy E. Reichert. I am here with Heather Webb and our fabulous guest, Amy Impellizzeri. Amy is the author of lots and lots of books. Most recently, I Know How This Ends, and she has a really, really great podcast where she interviews authors called I Know How This Book Ends, because it's, her book. Anyway, she'll tell you all about it.
We'll get into in a bit, yes.
We will get into it with a bit. So welcome, Amy. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you, guys. This is so fun. I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
So we will kick it off with some poppy news.
Poppy news. All right. So we don't have a ton of news, but we've got some fun news. The first it's fun for me and maybe not for everyone, but Bibliophile chose 3 Words for Goodbye as a most anticipated historical for the summer. So that's exciting. Only
it's not under my computer.
So on point. It's not holding up your computer. Yes. And then the big news is that we're taking on 5 brand new poppies. We're new poppy writers. So we're so excited. We're going to be introducing them soon in Bloom in a couple of weeks. But we've been sort of excitedly sitting on this list of very awesome, very excellent writers that are going to be joining us. So that's the poppy news.
Yay! Short,
exciting,
super sweet.
Yes. So we always like to talk about what we're reading first because that's why we're here, right? So Amy, do you have anything that you'd like to share that you would recommend or that you're reading? Or
I am reading this book, 7 Days in June. I was lucky enough to get an advance copy because Tia Williams is going to be on the podcast soon, so stay tuned for that. And of course, it was just announced that her book is a Reese Book Club pick, so I feel super lucky. I'm not surprised at all. It's amazing. I'm not quite finished, so I don't know how this book ends just yet, but I will before I interview Tia.
I love that.
I just saw that announced today. I don't follow many celebrities, but I do follow Reese on Instagram. Do you guys too? Yeah, you're shaking your head. Yeah, she's adorable, and I love seeing her kids, and then all the book recommendations and the fun stuff. Yeah, so I do like.
I know, and I love what she's doing for women in entertainment, and yes. I just think and female written books and females in media. So I just think she's amazing.
Yeah,
and she's got cute dog content, so that always
win-win.
I am a sucker. That's pretty much my Instagram feed is books and dogs and Wisconsin silliness.
We love that.
That's all. So I'm reading Early Morning Riser by Catherine Haney. I met Catherine a few years ago at a book event. She's a riot, and her books are even funnier. This book is about the main character is dating a guy who happens to have dated like everybody else in the small town. So even though he's wonderful and delightful, she kind of feels like she's dating the town.
Wonderful and delightful. I love your descriptors.
It's a little
He's been a little busy, it sounds like.
Yes.
Making the rounds.
So it's funny, but it's also can be a little biting sometimes, but in that wonderful, almost satirical way. But then something happens that, of course, makes the main character question everything, which I'm not going to explain right now.
Oh,
so it's great. Catherine Haney is a hoot. I really like her books.
So as usual, I've got one audiobook going and one paperback. Well, it's actually hardcover, but I'll share this one first. It's called White Rose by Kip Wilson. And this has actually been out for maybe a year and a half, 2 years now.
Yeah.
But it's a gorgeous book. It's World War II era, which I'm not a huge World War II. I mean, I do read them sometimes, but I wouldn't say I'm a big buff. But this is it's a young adult book, and it's written entirely in verse. So it's these gorgeous poems that tell a story, and she's won all these awards. It's a very good book. Highly recommend that. And she's lovely too, actually. And then the audio book I'm listening to, I don't know if you can see it, but it's The Echo Wife, and it is by Sarah Gailey, and it's creepy, and it's kind of a tech thriller. So you have a woman who works in a lab who clones humans, and she and her husband divorce, and he clones her, programming her to be everything that he didn't like about her. And then there's a murder, and just keep in mind that a clone shares the DNA of the host. So I don't read a ton of stuff like this, but I was so fascinated by the premise that I just got sucked right in. So in any case, if you're looking for an interesting sort of tech thriller, give it a shot. That's what. Amy's laughing because I was like, I don't know how I fell into this book, and now I'm like totally reading this really dark book. But it's been fun too.
And someone like must have used the little face emoji.
Yeah, I see it there. Yeah.
Like, whoa! That's what I was giggling about, because that's what I feel like. I agree.
Yes, yeah. I also agree with that. I mean, I'm already halfway through it in one day, so that tells you something. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are you doing while you're listening?
Exercising, cooking, cleaning, driving children to all their various appointments. Yeah. Like, Mom, do you have to put the book on again? I'm like, if I have to drive you somewhere else again, I'm putting the book on.
All right. So that's me listening to podcasts, which I think segues nicely.
It does.
Right into Amy.
That's just beautiful.
Amy has a fantastic podcast called I Know How This Book Ends. Isn't this a cute? I love this picture.
I love this graphic. Speak Studio made this graphic. It's not the first one. There were several iterations, and
I see you in that graphic, Amy, like wearing a sexy, pretty little shirt like that. I totally see you rocking that.
I feel like, did you ever see those memes of like somebody planking, and it's like, this is what I think I look like planking, and then this is like the rhinoceros planking. So I feel like that graphic is what I think I look like doing the podcast. But the reality is something totally different.
Oh, you have a fan, Amy.
Oh, thank you, Pam. I love that.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of being on Amy's podcast, and I think you are a fantastic interviewer.
Well, thank you very much.
I'll be knocking on your door soon.
Yes. I'll be knocking on yours. Because we love to do the interview new authors as their new books come out. So Heather, I'm so excited to, hopefully you'll say yes to be on the podcast, because the thing that I'm trying to do with this, well, let me just back up.
Yeah,
the way it started was I released I Know How This Ends on the eve of the pandemic. It literally released March of last year. And the funny thing is that the book is set against the backdrop of a spring of 2020 huge commencement ceremony that's happening in Carnegie Hall. Right. So irony, right? So here it is, it releases, and it's based on an event that never happens. But interestingly, I mean, it's a time-bending book. It's about parallel universes. So there's something kind of funky about that now in hindsight, because it's sort of like this alternate reality book. And the reason that it was important that it be set against the backdrop of a commencement ceremony is it's about the commencement ceremony was for the first graduating class of 9/11 survivors. So I always knew that the spring of 2020 were the first 9/11 babies. You know, their mothers were pregnant on or around 9/11 with them, and that was the first graduating class. And I was always mesmerized by them. Yeah, and so it just made them like, what?
That poor class.
I know. I wrote an article that was about it that was picked up last year too, because I just feel like that class is like, there's just like a symbol of like, resiliency and triumph after loss and all sorts of things. So I just find them very unique. And of course, now they're even more unique. So flash forward, I released a book on the eve of the pandemic, which is challenging as people, thank you so much, Pam. But a lot of people really, we had a big launch party right before the world shut down in the Hamptons, and then everything else got canceled. Literally the last thing I did before the shutdown was go to a big party in the Hamptons for the book. And then it was a bedside reading sponsored event. And
Sounds like a good way to go out, though. I'm not going to
it
lie.
was, I did. I went out with a bang. And I remember us all sitting around a table at the restaurant that night saying, like, what do we think is going to happen? Are we going to be able to, like, make our flights next week that we all have planned? And it was just a whole surreal moment in hindsight. So, but a lot of people, really helped me promote the book online and did a lot of really kind, wonderful things for me. And so then I started trying to pay that forward as books were being released in the spring and early summer of 2020. And I started a book club called I Know How This Book Ends, that just sort of came to me like, well, I'm going to start a book club and I'm going to feature my friends who are releasing new books right now because people have done that for me. And so I started having people on every week, and we didn't do, this was at the beginning of the shutdown and it was sort of like cobbled together. We didn't do it as a live event. We did it as an actual virtual book club, a Zoom book club. It wasn't taped. It was whatever happens here stays here. It was this very eclectic group. I invited a bunch of friends, like my college roommates, but then also I would post about it. And so like bookstagrammers would come on and book bloggers, and we started getting this really eclectic group. And then we started inviting, the authors, all different authors to come on. And Sarah Pekkanen came on, and Candace Bushnell came on, and it became
Nice.
like, it sort of became this thing. And Book Trib, called it one of the top virtual events of 2020. It was on like the list with all these fun things. Yeah. And so it got some media and it got some buzz. And so Speak.studio was starting this podcast platform and asked me to, I don't know, Kate, how did you know about it?
There's so much to keep up with, though, isn't there? But yeah.
Yeah,
now
I
you
know,
do.
exactly. And so then Speak.studio is a startup company. They're starting this really amazing podcast platform where eventually people are going to be able to start their own podcast. That's really the goal. But they've started with this original lineup of podcasts, and they've asked the Tall Poppy writers to, create some new podcasting programming for them. And so Ann Garvin has one. She's a 5-minute podcast. And I know.
By the way, 5 minutes seems about right to keep her focused on one thing.
Perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I love it. And it's called Come Sit By Me. It's amazing. And I Know How This Book Ends. And so every week we feature, the author of a new book that's out this year. And I try to, we don't meet ahead of time. Amy knows, she's been on. I try to make it a conversation, but I also try to ask questions that hopefully you haven't been asked before. So we do talk in a spoiler-free way about how the book ends. I find out if that was really the original way. We talk in a general way. Like I said, we don't give the spoiler, but I find out, was that really the way the book was going to end? And we get some really great inside information. I ask questions like, who are you most afraid to read this book? Like, are you sending a secret message to your boyfriend, your ex-boyfriends in this book, the way you've written in the book? Just things like that. And it becomes, because I'm a writer, right? And so I know I've done these interviews, right? And sometimes you answer the same questions over and over again. You get your really perfectly rehearsed, perfect answers, and you give them at each event, right? But sometimes you just sit there and you think to yourself, what if they did ask me, am I sending secret messages to my ex-boyfriend in my book? Like, what if somebody actually asked me that? And, Ann Garvin, we did the pilot episode, and Ann went through my books and was like, I'm going to ask you a question that everyone else is probably too polite to ask. Your first book is about a marriage breaking down.
I can totally see her
in crisis when you wrote that book, Yes. Were you, your second book is all about a woman who is, petrified of getting in her own way. What's your, biggest, most secret fear that you don't want anyone to know, and just and it was fun. So go back and watch the pilot, listen to the pilot episode, and it's me on the hot seat getting asked all those questions. And then that was sort of our way of introducing how this was all going to go. So it's been really fabulous. We've had some really amazing writers on so far. Tall Poppy writers as they release their books, like Amy Reichert, of course. Camille Pagan is coming up. Of course, Christy Woodson Harvey has an episode for her most recent book. And we are going to be having Tia Williams on and some other surprises coming up. So I don't want to give away too many surprises, but I am going to do a giveaway I have a little tote bag of a little swag bag of merchandise from the podcast, a tote bag, a water bottle, and I'm going to give away a copy of Tia's book that just came out today. So stay tuned, follow my page, and we'll share this.
Yep.
We'll share this recording and I'll host a giveaway.
Yeah, keep an eye on Amy's page. She'll have all that info.
Yeah.
I love it.
Do you happen to have the bag next to you that you can show?
I do, actually.
Can you see?
I do. This is my little, I know, it's cute, right? And then I got some fun merch. Let's see what else we have. We got a little water bottle.
I have such a vague collection, but I feel like I can never have to make
nice.
This one.
Got a little water bottle. Yeah. And
bag.
Yeah. So
hi Trisha.
Hi Trisha.
Hi Trisha. Yeah, I have to say it's been really fun, and I did not. The funny thing is, I'm actually my newest work in progress that I'm working on right now. That's out on submission right now. So stay tuned. Hopefully, there's going to be some information about that soon. Is about a podcast host, an ex-lawyer turned podcast host, and I wrote it. It's my pandemic book. I wrote that book during the pandemic, and I had no aspirations of hosting a podcast. I just thought that it was, obviously an amazing development, especially in the pandemic, that, podcasts were being developed and creative podcasts were being developed. And so now it's become so funny because I did have to go back and sort of like edit those scenes now that I am a podcast host and I sort of have a little more insight as to what it really involves. But it's been a really fun, creative venture, I have to say. It's been really fun. And it is, listen, I miss writers. I miss writing retreats. I miss writing conferences. I miss PoppyCon. I miss being in the company, the physical company of writers. I just think that's like that mojo is so important to the process. And so it's just like a little teeny, taste of that to kind of like get to talk to writers every week and really get inside their head and have them relax a little bit because I'm a writer and they know they're like safe, but not really, because I'm going to ask them a couple hard questions.
Exactly like Amy and I with the Bloom Room. We have so much fun. Sometimes we'll be on after the show for a really long time with people because we're so desperate to see each other. We all just chat,
Hear that conversation.
And then Carrie just says that she loves how supportive authors are of each other. We're colleagues and we need each other. I think it's a difficult business. So,
but it is unique to writers, I do think. I mean, I'm sure there are other industries like that, but I always say, I was a lawyer in my old life, and had there been tall poppy lawyers, I might still be a lawyer, but there were no tall poppy lawyers. There were anti-poppy lawyers. I mean, women in the industry, were just as cutthroat as the men, and not supportive, right? And so it is unique. Trisha's asking, is the podcast only on Apple? It is available on. Thank you for that question. It is available on Apple. It's also available on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the Speak.Studio website. Nice. So everywhere you listen to your podcast.
Oh, you're so good.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love
But
that.
Yeah, I do think writers are sort of a unique bunch in terms of the generosity. And I do think it's because we have like sort of solitary careers. We're constantly like trying to reach out for some love, right?
Yeah.
It's an industry where the information you need isn't always easy to get access to.
Mm-hmm.
No.
You need these relationships with writers so you can ask, hey, what's really bad first week sales? Oh, that's what I had. Oh,
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's like part of the lore is that like we like guard this information and then we gotta like self-sabotage by doing that. It's so bizarre.
And I think a lot of it we have to guard because it's unprofessional to share it when in fact we all need to share it so that we can actually make the industry better.
Yes.
But there's this sort of weird undercurrent sometimes I think of competition too from people that you don't know. Sometimes people you do know.
Yeah.
So then people won't share information because there's that going on too. But in general, I'd say people are pretty great.
Well, and
Yeah.
people who, I mean, when you have a giant book deal and you get all of the benefits that come with that, I think there's almost a level of, I don't want to tell people what I'm getting because then they might feel bad and hate me.
There's that too. Yeah, yeah.
So
I'll tell you, there was Elle Casamano. Do you guys know Elle? She wrote Finley Donovan is Killing It.
Yes, I don't know her personally.
Oh, well, she was on the podcast. And first of all, that book is like one of the funniest books I've read definitely this year, but in a long time. So good. But the book is very meta. And I said to her, like, it's about this like housewife who's like she's a writer. She's like a divorced, she's not a housewife. She's a divorced suburban mom, writer who gets involved in like the Russian mob and this like cute law student, like bartender and all this like crazy stuff. And yet it's this incredibly relatable, accessible book. And the character is so relatable and accessible, but she's a writer. And I said to Elle, the most shocking things in that book were not the scenes with the Russian mob, but were Elle actually making disclosures about what an actual advance is, a good advance and a bad advance, because her writer character was like saying numbers out loud. And I was like, oh, I said, did your agent tell you had to like, take that out? Did you get any pushback? And she said, remarkably, no. But it was really shocking to see somebody put that actually out there, put that information, like what's a breakthrough advance, what an actual normal advance was. It was very interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, and readers read a lot of books. I know, that's the thing. Like, nobody owns just one book, right? So, like, of course, there's no reason for us to be competitive with each other.
Yeah, yeah. And
we all walk around with these stacks of books. Right? That's what we do.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I know. And I have so many books to read. And then I went and I bought a giant series of fantasy books that I'm ignoring all of the other books I plan to read and reading that first. Why do I do that? But I do it.
Kate, I love you. Kate says her daughter's going to law school in the fall. I saw you also put up there earlier, tall poppy lawyer seems like an oxymoron, which, yeah, it does. I have a book for your daughter. Buy your daughter a Welcome to Law School book. It's called Lawyer Interrupted. It's my nonfiction title. I'm also releasing a book called, I'm in the middle of writing it. I'm under contract with a co-author called How to Leave the Law. but Lawyer Interrupted is about, it's not my memoir. It's a synthesis of stories and research about lawyers using their JD for other careers or other professional aspirations besides working for a law firm. So, Kate, buy that book for your daughter.
My daughter's that's on the list of potential future jobs. Which
how old is your daughter?
She's 17. She's a junior.
Yeah, like my son. I thought they were the same age. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard when you have a lawyer as a parent. You see.
Yeah.
So it seems less unattainable.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And if your husband's happy in his field, right?
He is very
good. Happy lawyer.
Because let's be honest, I mean, he's at that point in his career where he isn't doing a whole lot of actual lawyering. It's all about bringing in the business.
Yes.
And having the lunches and all that kind of stuff. And then he farms it out to the little peons to do.
Right.
So it's a different stage in his career.
Yeah. He's not starting out. It's a really different thing. Yeah.
He did that. I mean,
Yeah, sure. He had to work his way up.
Didn't see him for several years.
Yeah, of course.
Oh wow!
It's not to say that everyone should leave the law, but it's not. No. It's not for everyone, and it's surprising sometimes. You sort of have this idea of what practicing law is going to be, and everybody gets into the practice of law or going to law school for different reasons, and then sometimes it doesn't really match what you thought.
I think that's true of any career, really, though, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed by the number of writers that are former attorneys. We just last week we had our two guests were both former attorneys.
Yes.
And I think as one, what do you think it is about that background that seems to translate so well into writing?
Well, here's the catch. It doesn't always.
Fair.
But lawyers are professional writers, right? So because the Bar Association, I published for the Bar Association. My first book contract was actually Lawyer Interrupted. So I was writing my first novel was Lemongrass Hope. I was writing Lemongrass Hope for years. I was getting it ready to submit. I was working with a developmental editor. I was in a coffee shop, and I got a call from an agent who worked for the Bar Association, who said, we've been reading I was writing like business law articles and articles about my sabbatical. I had taken a 1-year sabbatical that became a 3-year sabbatical, during which time I was writing this book. But while I was on sabbatical, I was writing for different law journals and things like that. And she said, we've been wanting to pitch this book to the ABA called Lawyer Interrupted, and we think you're the person to write it. Do you want to write this book? And I was like, okay, well, I'm writing this novel. Here's the book I'm trying to get out in the world. But, you're describing a book I really would love to write. Let's pitch it. So I pitched that book. I got that contract first. Okay. Then that helped me get the contract for Lemongrass Hope, because I was like, here, I have another book on the way. The Bar Association is going to publish. And then Lemongrass Hope came out, and then I had to write Lawyer Interrupted. But then I started doing a lot of law conferences and CLE conferences and talking to lawyers about alternative paths for their JDs. And inevitably, lawyers would come out of the woodwork, and the organizers would always say to me, you have to have a section in there about writing a book. You have to have a section in there about how to write a book. How did you do this journey? And I would be like, they really want to know about that? And inevitably, every single conference I went to, I traveled across the country, they always want to know, okay, but how do I write a book? And I was like, well, it's not like law school where you go to law school, you take the bar, there's like a set path, you start practicing law. It's very different than that. And lawyers don't always like to hear that. Mm-hmm. And also, legal writing is different than fiction writing. And it can translate. And I think the plotting process is actually what really translates over, right? Because I think lawyers can, I write my books as if I'm cross-examining them, right? So I'm trying to find the holes. I'm trying to figure out, like, what would my adversary say is my best argument, my weak argument. I'm going to bury the weak argument in the back as sort of like, and I think I look at the plotting and the structure like a lawyer, but it does take some reframing. And so, when we see the lawyers who have transitioned over to fiction writing, I think they're probably the ones who've had, I hope I put myself in this camp, who've had a little bit of humility to understand that you really have to study the craft of writing and realize that just because you've been a professional writer all your professional life, there's going to be a little work that needs to be done to transition over.
I've seen a lot of that with academics too. People who are professors and they, they're researchers and they publish for a living along with their teaching. And so sometimes they're fantastic writers. Yes. And sometimes they come in and they just think that, well, I wrote all this nonfiction. Mm-hmm. Fiction can't be that hard. And it's 1,000 times harder. Like not 10, not 50, 1,000. Because of everything that goes into it. We know writing tone and mood and foreshadowing and a million things, emotion, all this stuff, right? Great dialogue. And so I always find that interesting. Being a freelance editor, I get a lot of that kind of stuff where I've worked with quite a few academics who are like, I had no idea how hard this was. And I'm like,
right.
It's a skill set. So it's a skill set, and it's a totally different one, Yeah,
I find nonfiction absolutely painful to write. It's horrible. Like to write an essay about something, I have a very hard time.
Yeah.
It's a totally different muscle. It's a totally different muscle.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay. Sure. Well, this got a real little side.
I know. And we went so fast. We usually wrap in 30 minutes, but I really kind of want to share this product because I've been trying to share it for like 3 weeks. Okay. So can I share it before we get off?
Of course.
Okay, I'm going to turn this light off though.
Oh.
It's getting dark in here.
Again?
I mean, I still have my overhead light, but at least you can kind of see. So I'm kind of in love with these things. It's called Maji, and basically it's a flat plasticky thing, and you put water in it, and they come in a pack of 4. They're like $15. And they have these little candles that flicker that are, there's a sensor, and you drop it in the water.
Oh!
And it's like a candle, and you don't have to worry about blowing them out or catching fire or whatever. So I put this I put one in each corner of my bathtub.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
It's my favorite new thing, and they have a million different patterns that are fun. And so, yes, I'm in love with them. So I had to share that.
I love that.
that.
So I'll put that link in the
That would be so fun for a party, like a pool party, lining.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's a fun. You can like use them on a patio, or if you have a hot tub, put them outside around the hot tub, and not have to worry about fires.
Yeah, and you
have kids,
dump the little lights into your bathtub.
You could drop them right if you have a pool. Like, oh my God, talk about a romantic. Get a set of those and just drop them in the pool at night. Ooh, night swimming. Love it.
Oh, you are funny.
Oh, anyway, so thank you for letting me share that.
Yes, no, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we wrap it up?
We should wrap. I think it's been 30 minutes. We don't want to lose our people. Thank you guys for coming. And Amy, thank you for telling us about your podcast. I'm really excited to check it out.
So go subscribe to her podcast on whatever platform you listen to. I know how this book ends. She really is a great interviewer. You're going to love it. Barbara, nice little
skinny dipping. Exactly.
And we will see you next week. Thank you for coming to the Bloom Room.
Bye, guys. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.